Welcome to Tigray Media House. My name is Malitti. It has been 6 months since the Ethiopian government waged war on Tigray. For 6 months, the people have been looted, pillaged, raped. Heritage sites have been destroyed, churches, mosques. The people are truly suffering. We know that more than 1 million, up to 2 million people are internally displaced within Tigray. We know that more than 60,000 refugees have fled to Sudan. It would be a greater number, except the Ethiopian government is blocking the border now. Eritrean troops, Ethiopian troops, Hara militias are truly abusing the people of Tigray. It's been really hard and difficult to get information from the people. There's a fear of being able to speak up and share what's happening. For those of you who don't know, Tigray is a very historic place. We know that arguably it is the birthplace of Christianity. We know that it was the Tigrayan people who gave the Prophet Muhammad's followers sanctuary when they were being persecuted. We know that the Ark of the Covenant is in Aksum, the site of a gruesome massacre at St. Mary's Church by Eritrean soldiers. This show is a really special show because Orthodox Christians have just come off of their fast for Easter. We know that Ramadan is coming to an end, but I would argue that the people are not fasting and hungry for food. The people are fasting and hungry to hear from their religious and spiritual leaders about what is happening in Tigray and why aren't we hearing more? Why aren't we hearing them condemn what's happening? In fact, actually, there was a group, a committee that was set up that blessed the war on Tigray that had a Catholic cardinal on the committee. And so we have been, as a spiritual people, really challenged by what's happening. I want to introduce our guest today because he's brought us word that we have been hungry for and have been waiting for a long time. Mr. Dennis Wadley, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Dennis Wadley. I've been working, my wife and I, in Ethiopia for the last 11 years. Serving the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, training leaders. And we just were up in Mekelle. We went up to support the IDPs, the refugees up there. And then when we were in Addis, I had the privilege of spending a few meetings with His Holiness, Patriarch Abune Matthias.
How do you know the Patriarch? How do you know His Holiness? Is this your first time meeting him, or have you met him previously?
No, we've met many times in the last 8 years, and prior to that, had the privilege of calling Abune Paulus a friend as well. So as we've been involved in leadership training, it's just been natural to have connection and to try to support and encourage both Abune Paulus and then Abune Matthias as well. I consider him a dear friend.
So I want to talk about the statement that the Patriarch has given and that we're going to show immediately following our interview with you. But tell me a little bit about what you saw in Tigray, because the information is so limited and people are so afraid to speak up. Can you tell us a little bit about what you saw you were working specifically with internally displaced Tigrayans?
Yeah, and we had been told that the G7 had told the military to disperse. Mekelle is completely overrun with military. I have pictures of military all over town and at the Aksum Hotel and, in the Ethiopian Airlines office. And, it's clearly being run by the military. And we were overwhelmed with the number 21 IDP centers, one that had just opened that week with 1,885 people, pregnant women, elderly, nursing moms, little children, and nothing to sleep on and absolutely no food. And they're popping up, one after another. And so the needs are massive. It's far worse than what we would have imagined. And the areas beyond Mekelle, we've been told, are even far, far worse than what we experienced.
Wow. We heard the World Food Program said between 50 to 100 Tigrayans are dying daily. Our fear is starvation. And
yes.
We've been here before. Can you talk about that a little bit? You said there's no food.
Yeah, what we have been told is the blockades are causing starvation in huge numbers, especially in those rural areas, with a goal of even greater starvation to come because of the destruction of the crops and burning of farms. And, the issues are just one atop the next and the next and the next. It's so overwhelming.
What are the people saying aside from, I mean, hunger is a very basic, I mean, that's level one, but what are the people relaying to you in terms of, I know you were doing some sort of trauma relief, is that, or tell me a little bit about what you were doing.
Yeah, so my wife is trained in trauma healing, and Susan did a trauma healing workshop training leaders. And, the leaders in this IDP camp were professionals. They were teachers and business leaders, and she trained them how to help others to deal with their trauma at the same time working through their own traumatic issues. And that was a big part of why we came. We brought supplies as well, and we're trying to raise funds. We're in it for the long haul. We love the people of Tigray, but what we learned were just horrible stories. A tiny little girl who fled with her family and got shot in the knee, bled. They thought she was going to bleed out. Thankfully, she lived. Another little girl who got separated from her family, and she ran one direction with her uncle, and her uncle was murdered by the military. She's completely alone now, doesn't know if any of her family are alive. There's just story after story after story that would just break your heart. And it's the norm. And it's repeated thousands and thousands of times. And the world has got to react. The world has got to stand up and say, this is enough. This is our generation's Rwanda, and it has to end.
Mm. You said there are 22 camps that you are aware of, or 21 internally displaced?
21 right now. There's probably 22. That was a week ago. So they're popping up all over the place.
How do the people, are the people safe? I mean, you said they're military everywhere. Is this Eritrean military, Ethiopian military? I mean, what we hear is that people don't feel safe. They're scared of the people in uniform. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's unnerving, and especially for those who've had to flee them. It's, there's definite PTSD when they see military. Even as a foreigner, just to see the heavy artillery, so many soldiers, and you can feel the presence of evil, to be honest, around them. And so it's very impactful for them to be there. I'd say most people are experiencing fear knowing what they've done. And while we were there, the week that we were there, they, in a certain corner of Mekelle, they went to a bus stop and just randomly killed multiple innocent civilians who were waiting at a bus stop.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And like you said, most of the stories aren't coming out, and we're hearing it from our families when the lines are connected and when the stories come out. But there's just so much more. I want to get into why we have this show and what's coming up next. So tell me a little bit about the Patriarch and what he said when you met with him in Addis Ababa.
So yeah, I had the privilege of meeting with Abuni Matthias, and we've cultivated a friendship through the years. When I was there, I just asked him, what his feelings were, and with what was happening, and he teared up and got really emotional, sharing that he was unable to get the message out because the people around him were being threatened. Their lives were being threatened if he speaks out. And he actually had 3 different interviews. One was a 40-minute long taped TV interview by the Orthodox media. There are people leaking things within his inner circle, and those things got shut down. And he was told if he speaks out against this, those around him will suffer the consequences. And he said he doesn't fear for his own life. But when we talked, he said, I need to get the message out. I want to speak. And I told him, well, what if I record you? What if I pull out my phone and we make a recording right now? And he said, would you do that? And I said, of course, you are my friend. I told him again and again in this time, I'm so thankful to have him as a friend. And I recorded him, and what you're going to see tonight is just him sharing his heart. There was no rehearsal. He literally sat and thought for a few seconds, and I hit record, and it was one take, and what you see is from his heart.
Wow. And just so people know, Patriarch Abune Matyas, he is the sixth head of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. He is an ethnic Tigrayan. And in the 80s, he was one of the first church leaders to denounce the Derg. In case you don't know that, everyone knows who the Derg is. It was a horrible military regime that killed over 1 million Tigrayans through war and also through starvation. He also pronounced an anathema against, you got to go, right? Because you have a flight.
I got to catch a plane. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to show this clip now. And thank you for bringing his voice to us. We appreciate you so much.
Anytime, any way I can be of help, I want to help.
በስመ አብ ወወልድ ወመንፈስ ቅዱስ አሐዱ አምላክ አሜን። በሀገር ውስጥም ከሀገር ውጭም ያላችሁት ኢትዮጵያውያንና ኢትዮጵያውያት በሙሉ በአሁኑ ጊዜ በሀገራችን በኢትዮጵያ በተለይ ደግሞ በትግራይ ክልል እየተካሄደ ያለው አረመኔነት የአረማዊነት ስራ እንዲቆም ብዙ ጊዜ ሞክሬ አልተሳካም። ምክንያቱም ፈቃድ አልተሰጠም። እናገራለሁ፣ ይመልሱታል፣ እናገራለሁ፣ ይመልሱታል። ይሄው እስካሁን ድረስ ምንም አይነት ፈቃድ አልተገኘም። እና ሁላችሁም ወገኖቻችን ማወቅ ያለባችሁ እዚህ ያለውን ችግር የኔን ችግር የማውቀው እኔ ነኝ። እና አሁን በኢትዮጵያ ወይም ደግሞ በተለይ በትግራይ ክፍለ ሀገር በተለይ እየተካሄደ ያለው የአረማዊነት ስራ ብዙ ጊዜ ሞክሬያለሁ ለመቃወም፣ ግን ስላልተፈቀደ ወይም ወደ አየር ለመውጣት ስላልተፈቀደ እየታፈነ እየቀረ ነው እስካሁን ድረስ ያለሁትና አሁን ያው ያለውን ሁኔታ በትግራይ ክልል በተለያዩ አካባቢዎች አለ፣ በኦሮሚያም አለ፣ በቤኒሻንጉል አለ፣ በሸዋሮቢት አለ፣ በልዩ ልዩ አካባቢዎች ችግር እንዳለ ይታወቃል። ነገር ግን የትግራይን ያህል አይደለም። የትግራይ ችግር እጅግ የከፋ እጅግ በጭካኔ የተሞላበት የአረመኔያዊነት ስራ እየተሰራ እንደሆነ እንኳን እኔ ዓለም አውቆታል። አሁን ዓለም አውቆታልና አሁንስ ልናገር ብዬ አሁን በሚያዝያ 7 ያደረኩት ኢንተርቪው ሚያዝያ 7 2013 ማለት ነው ያደረኩት ኢንተርቪው አሁን ታግደዋል። እና አሁን ምንድነው ይህ አሁን እየተደረገ ያለው የህዝብ እልቂት በተለይ ደግሞ ሲቪሊያን የሆኑ ወገኖቻችን ወደየከተማው ወደየመንደሩ ወደየግለቤቱ ሰብ እየሄዱ ወጣቶቹን እየገደሉ ገድለው ደግሞ እንዳይተው እንዲያውም ወደ ገደል እየጣሉ ተገድለው እንኳን ለመቃብር ያልበቁ ለምሳሌ እንደ ማህበረ ዲዮቅ አይነት አሁን እስካሁን ድረስ እልቂቱ 5 ወር አሁን 6ኛ ወራችን ነው። እስካሁን ድረስ ይሄው ግድያው እየተካሄደ ነው ያለው። ይህ ግፍ እንግዲህ እግዚአብሔር እንዴት እንደሚመልሰው የራሱ ዳኝነት ይኖራል። ነገር ግን ህዝብ እያለቀ ነው ያለው። ክፉኛ እያለቀ ነው ያለው። ሴቶች እየተደፈሩ ነው ያሉት። ሴቶች እየተሳቀዩ ነው ያሉት። እንዲያውም ከነሱ የሞቱ ይሻላሉ የሞቱ ወንዶቹ ይሻላሉ ዘላለማዊ ስቃይ በህይወታቸው ሙሉ በአይምሮአቸው የማይፋቅ ጠባሳ ያስቀምጡባቸው ነው ያለው በኢትዮጵያ በትግራይ ሴቶች ላይ እና የሁሉ እልቂት እንዴት እንደሚቆም እንዴት ምን እንደሚደረግ እኔ በእውነቱ አላውቅም እና የዓለም መንግስታት ሁሉ ሰምተውት እኔ አሁን እየተናገርኩ ያለሁት ዓለም ያወቀውን ነው እስካሁን ድረስ ያው 6 ወር ሙሉ አፋችን ተለጉሞ በፍርሃት እና በተጽዕኖ እኛ እስካሁን ድረስ አልተናገርንም ለምን የባሰ ጉዳት እንዳይደርስ በሚልም እንደገና ደግሞ እነሱ የሚሉት በጦርነቱ በኩል ያለው አንሶ እንደገና ደግሞ በግል ወደየቤቱ እየዞሩ ወደየከተማው ወደየመንደሩ ወደየግለቤቱ እየዞሩ ንጹሃን ዜጎችን እየቀሰፉ ይገኛሉ ይህ እንግዲህ እጅግ የሚያሳዝን ደግሞ እንደገና ዘረፋ ደግሞ አለ የትግራይ ንብረት ተዘርፎ አልቋል ህይወቱም ንብረቱም መብቱም ተገፈዋል የትግራይ ህዝብ ሁሉንም ነው የተገፈፈው ንብረቱም ህይወቱም መብቱም ተገፎ የትግራይ ህዝብ ካላጠፋን ብለው ይኸው እስካሁን ድረስ እርምጃ እየወሰዱ ይገኛሉ እንግዲህ ይህ ሁሉ ችግር እየደረሰ ምንም አይነት ድንጋጤ የሌላቸው ምንም አይነት ምክንያቱም አሁንማ ይባስ ተብሎ ገበሬዎች እርሻ እንዳያርሱ እንኳን ተከልክለዋል እርሻ እንኳን እንዳያርሱ ለሚመጣው ችግራቸው የሚመጣውን ችግራቸው እንዲያስወግዱ ወይም ደግሞ የሚበሉትን የሚጠጡትን እንዲያገኙ አርሰው ቆፍረው ደክመው እንኳን እንዳይጠቀሙ እርሻ አታርሱም እያሉ የእርሻ መሳሪያዎችን እያቃጠሉ እንደገና ደግሞ ለምን ብላችሁት ነው እናንተ እኮ አልቃችኋል እናንተ እኮ መኖር አልተፈቀደላችሁም በዚህ ምድር ላይ መኖር አልተፈቀደላችሁም እናንተ በምንም አይነት መኖር እንዳትኖሩ ተወስኖባችኋል እና ለምንድን ነው የምታርሱት እያሉ እየከለከሉ ይሄውና እርሻ እንኳን ተከልክለዋል ሌላው ቀርቶ ሌላው ንብረት ስፍር ቁጥር የሌለው ንብረት ነው እንግዲህ የተወረደ በአብያተ ክርስቲያናት ላይ ይተኩሳሉ በገዳማት ላይ ይተኩሳሉ በአክሱም በደብረ ዳሞ በአክሱም ወደ ደብረ ዳሞ የተተኮሱት መድፎች መቼም እጅግ የሚያስደነግጥ ነው የመነኮሳቱ ቤት ፈርሷል አንድ አባትም ተገድለዋል አክሱም ጽዮን ያለቀው ንብረታቸውን ለመጠበቅ ወይም ደግሞ ለዓለማስነካት ወይም ለዓለማስወረር እየጠበቁ ያሉትን በመደዳ ገድለዋቸው ረግፈው ቀርተዋል እንደቅጠል ረግፈው ቀርተዋል አሁን በዓለም ሚዲያዎች እየተነገረ ነው ያለው በዓለም ሚዲያዎች እየተነገረ ያለውን እኛ እንዳንናገር ተከልክለናል ስለዚህ ይሄ ጉዳይ በእውነቱ የዓለም መንግስታት ቶሎ ብለው እርዳታ ቢያደርጉ ቶሎ ብለው ወሳኝ የሆነ ይህንን ግድያ የሚገታ የነፃ እርምጃ ነፃ ግድያ ነፃ የሰው ህይወትን ማጥፋት እየገደሉ ነው ያሉት እንደዚህ ሰዎች እና ይህንን በእውነቱ የሚቀርበት መንገድ እንኳን የሚታገድበት መንገድ እንኳን ቢፈጠር አብያተ ክርስቲያናት ገዳማት ተመተዋል የዋልድባ መነኮሳት እድሜ ልካቸውን ከኖሩበት ገዳም ተባረው ይሄው ተበትነው ቀርተዋል ሽማግሌዎቹ መንገድ ላይ ተጥለዋል ጉልበት ያላቸው ሸሽተዋል እነሱ ግን ጉልበት የሌላቸው ግን መንገድ ላይ ተጥለው ቀርተዋል ሽማግሌዎቹ ህመምተኞቹ እንዲህ አይነት ግፍ ተደርጎ ተሰምቶ አይታወቅም እጅግ አስቀያሚ ነው በተለይ የሴቶች መደፈር በጣም የረከሰ በጣም የቆሸሸ በጣም ነውር የጸያፍ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው። እንዲህ አይነት ድፍረት እንዲህ አይነት ቆሻሻ የሆነ ስራ መስራት በእውነቱ ይገባል ወይ? እግዚአብሔርን ሳይፍሩ ይህን የሚሰሩ ሰዎች እግዚአብሔርን ሳይፍሩ እንደው ሰው ምን ይለናል እንኳን አይሉም ወይ? ምን አይነት ፍጥረቶች እንደሆኑ እኔ በእውነቱ አዝናለሁ። እጅግ አዝናለሁ። እስካሁን ድረስ እኔ አፌ ተረጉሞ ተከልክዬ ነው እስካሁን ድረስ ይኸው እየተጨነቅኩ ያለሁት እና አሁን ይህንን ድርጊት ሳያመኝ ቀርቶ አይደለም፣ ሳይሰማኝ ቀርቶ አይደለም። እኔ በውጭ ሀገር እድል ባገኝ ኑሮ እዛ እንደ ልቤ መናገር እችላለሁ እንደናንተ እንደምታደርጉት። ነገር ግን እዚህ ውስጥ ያለው ችግር ግን ላልፈው አልቻልኩም። ያዘጋጀሁትን ዝግጅት ሁሉ በየጊዜው እየታገደ ያው እስካሁን ድረስ በስቃይ እኖራለሁኝ እና ይህን ወቶ የዓለም መንግስታት ቶሎ ብለው ይህን ነገር እንዲቆም ለማድረግ የሚቻልበትን መንገድ ቢሞክሩ። አብያተ ክርስቲያናት መቼስ በነ ደብረ ዳሞና አክሱም ብቻ አይደለም፣ በነ አሲምባ የነበረው የባህታዊ ዘወንጌል ቤተክርስቲያን አዲስ ቤተክርስቲያን ተመተዋል። እነ ማርያም ደንገላት ላይ ያለቁት ሰዎች ጸሎት ላይ ኑሮ ጸሎታቸውን ጨርሰው ሲወጡ በአውደ ምህረት ነው ያረግፈዋቸው እንደቅጠል። ይሄ በእውነት ምን አሁን በየአካባቢ ይሄ መከራ ያልደረሰበት አካባቢ የለም። ሁሉም ተመተዋል፣ ሁሉም ተደብድበዋል። ሁሉም እንደው ከምድር ገጽ እናንተ ከምድር ገጽ ካልጠፋችሁ እንቅልፍ አንተኛም ብለው ትግሮች ካልጠፉ እንቅልፍ አናገኝም ብለው ይህን ሁሉ እያደረጉ ይገኛሉ። እና ይሄ ጉዳይ የዓለም ሕዝብ በይበልጥ እንዲያውቀውና አስቸኳይ እርዳታ እንዲያደርግ፣ አስቸኳይ እርምጃ እንዲወስድ፣ አስቸኳይ የሆነ ተግባር እንዲፈጽም ነው እኔ የምማጸነው። የዓለም አብያተ ክርስቲያናት በሙሉ ይህንን ጉዳይ ሰምተው ይህንን ጉዳይ አይተው የበኩላቸውን ድጋፍ እንዲያደርጉ፣ የበኩላቸውን እገዛ እንዲያደርጉ፣ ድምጽ መስጠት ራሱ ይህንን ድርጊት ተደርጎ የማይታወቅ በዓለም ተሰምቶ የማይታወቅ ስራ እኮ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው። በአፋችን እንኳን ለመናገር የማንደፍረው ጸያፍ እኮ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው በትግራይ ህዝብ ላይ እና ይሄን ጉዳይ እኔ በእኔ በኩል እንግዲህ ይሄ መልእክት ከደረሳችሁ ይህን የኔውን ችግርም ልታውቁልኝ ትችላላችሁ። እኔ ያረፍኩበት ጊዜ የለም። ህሊናዬ እንደታወከ ነው። አእምሮዬ እንደተበጠበጠ ነው ያለሁትና ይሄ ጉዳይ ምናልባት ይሄ ጉዳይ ድምጽ ተሰምቶ እገዛ ያደርግ ይሆን ወይ እና ይህን ጉዳይ ሁሉም እንዲያስብበት ነው የማስበው። እግዚአብሔር እንግዲህ ምሕረቱን ያምጣ። እግዚአብሔር የቸርነቱን ስራ ይስራ። ሌላው በዓለም ያለው ሆነ በሀገር ውስጥ ያለው የትግራይ ህዝብ መቼም እግዚአብሔር ያበርታህ ነው የምለው። እግዚአብሔር ያበርታህ፣ ኃይሉን ብርታቱን ይስጥህ። መቼም ጊዜ የማያልፍ ነገር የለም፣ ያልፍ ይሆናልና ሞራላችሁ አይውደቅ፣ ፍርሃት ድንጋጤ አይደርስባችሁ። ያው እግዚአብሔር ያሳልፈው ብላችሁ ወደ እግዚአብሔር ጩኹ፣ ወደ አምላካችሁ። እውነተኛ ፈራጅ እግዚአብሔር ነው። እውነተኛ ፍርድ ያውቃል እና ወደ አምላካችሁ ለምኑ፣ ጸልዩ እና ያለውን ችግር ሁሉ እንዲያሳልፍላችሁ በርትታችሁ ጸልዩ። ሞራላችሁ የተደገፈ ይሁን። ብርታቱን ይስጣችሁ እግዚአብሔር ሁሉንም አስወግዶ ሰላማዊ ዘመን ያምጣልን። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። እግዚአብሔር ይቀድሳችሁ። እግዚአብሔር በምህረቱ በቸርነቱ ይጎብኘን። እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ረድኤቱን ይላክልን። የሞቱትን ሰዎች እግዚአብሔር ነፍሳቸውን ይማር። የቆሰሉትን መድኃኒት ይስጣቸው፣ መድኃኒቱን ይስጥልን። እናንተም በያላችሁበት ይጠብቃችሁ እና የትግራይ ህዝብ ምን እንዳደረገ ምን በደሉ ምን እንደሆነ እንዲህ ከምድር ገጽ ካላጠፋንህ ተብሎ እና የህዝብ የዘር ማጥፋት ስራ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው እና ይሄ ጉዳይ ሁሉም እንዲያስብበት ዓለም ሁሉ እንዲያውቅበት በእርግጥ አውቆታል እያወቀው ነው እና ይሄ ጉዳይ እንዲታወቅበት ብዬ አሳስባለሁ። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ ይቀድሳችሁ። አሜን።